So I'm going to talk about UFOs today. UFOs obviously are something that people have their own opinions on. Everyone happens to have an opinion on UFOs, whether they're real, whether they're fake, whether you don't have enough information to have an opinion. Well, I'm one of those people that believed very strongly in UFOs for a very long time, and I gradually became a skeptic as I grew older. And I think the one case of UFO sighting that really led me to that conclusion was the Gulf Breeze UFO incident, which was a series of claimed UFO sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida, back between 1987 and 1988. So it began with a claim by a local man named Ed Walters, who took a variety of photographs of a UFO that were published in like the local newspaper. And gradually, the information of this trickled into the internet because obviously the internet came out in like 1990, 1991. Gradually, information of this disseminated into the internet, and then people had a variety of different opinions on whether or not the Gulf Breeze UFO incident was a real thing, that this guy was actually taking photos of real craft, or whether it was a fake. And really, this was what, so like between the ages of, like, I'd say 6 and 12, I was really deeply involved and very interested in UFOs and ufology and like alien reportings, alien abduction, and like reports and like other things like that. But as I began to grow older, I began to become a little bit more critical to a lot of stuff that happened to be promulgated about UFOs. And the Gulf Breeze UFO incident happened to be the thing that kind of, I guess, pushed me more into the realm of being a skeptic of things. So this guy took these really detailed photographs of UFOs, and really it had all of the same smatterings of like contactee UFO reports from like the 50s and 60s. Now, if you don't know what contactees are, there are people that when the initial wave of UFO sightings began to develop after 1947, there were people that came out of the woodwork that claimed to have been in contact with extraterrestrial species that were trying to promulgate this message of peace and love on Earth, that were against nuclear weapons and were trying to promote harmony on the planet Earth. And a lot of them, in order to back up their claims of having met extraterrestrials, produced a lot of photographs of craft that they said the extraterrestrials traveled in. And it was a lot of, I would go ahead and say, kind of fake photographs of UFOs and of various flying saucers at the time. And really, they were kind of, mainstream ufology kind of approached them with like ridicule, and a lot of the public approached them with ridicule, where they're like, this is obviously fake. And for ufologists, they were insulted by it because they felt like it actually detracted from the credibility of that people are happen to be seeing these things that they can't explain, and they're trying to understand and have an understanding of these things that people are reporting that they're seeing, and they're trying to approach it in a scientific way. And there's these crackpots coming out of the woodwork saying that they've reported seeing UFOs, and that they're actually talking to the occupants and they're space brothers. They're these Nordic aliens that are trying to promote this idea of peace and love. And really, I think with the whole Nordic alien thing, it ends up linking back to theosophy in the 1800s. In fact, a lot of modern occultism and a lot of the paranormal will eventually link back to theosophy and Madame Blavatsky back in the 1800s. It's actually really bizarre that almost every single thing with the occult in the modern day happens to be linked back to a basically a Russian con artist in the 1800s. But that's a point for another day. I have plenty of opinions about new religious movements and about the occult and other things. But besides that, let's get back to UFOs. So the Gulf Breeze incident was minimally investigated. MUFON and like C UFOs and stuff. various UFO reporting organizations looked into the reports and basically decided that they were fake, but there was enough of a following of people that happened to believe that they were real. There were enough kind of crackpot UFO researchers that happened to lend support to this guy, this Ed Waters or Ed Walters or whatever his name was, that it kind of detracted from the serious study of UFOs as an academic discipline. And of course, Bud Hopkins got involved. Now, who is Bud Hopkins? Bud Hopkins is an artist and an author. He died back in 2011, and he was a prominent figure in the alien abduction phenomenon and like research into the alien abduction phenomenon. And he kind of had some crackpot opinions with things, and he kind of detracted from the overall study of UFOs as an actual like subject of research. But it seemed like every single person that reported being abducted by aliens, Bud Hopkins would get involved with. Basically, go, this is 100% real. This totally happened, guys. Like you got to understand. Now he had some credentials from the art world. He was previously an artist before he got interested in like UFO research and in alien abductions. And he's actually in his lifetime he produced a lot of paintings, and he was actually a very like I would say that from a critical perspective, like he produced appreciable art. But and I think in the 70s he got awarded like a Guggenheim Fellowship for the paintings that he produced. But he eventually got involved in developing an interest in UFOs, and it kind of was a lifelong interest for him because when he was a kid, he listened to the 1938 radio play "The War of the Worlds" that Orson Welles produced, and it developed a lifelong fascination that once UFOs began to come into the fore with like flying saucer reports in the 1940s, he began to develop an interest in it. And eventually in the 1960s, he reported seeing a daytime sighting of an unidentified flying object. And he was dissatisfied with the response when he reported it to the local Air National Guard base, and he suspected a possible government cover-up, which is basically, that should be the red flag right there, is when you bring reports of sightings to local military installations and other things, and they dismiss it as being like as being some other phenomenon, and you're suspecting a government cover-up. That's where you know that you're kind of veering off the path and you're going into the conspiracy territory. Now, I'm very much a person that I appreciate conspiracy theories because, frankly, the government is doing messed up stuff all the time. But also, having had the experience of being in the military, I also understand that the military is relatively incompetent. It's not like an intentional like cover up of things. It's really just people being like, I don't fucking know what to do. That's above my pay grade. Like, I guess it's swamp gas. Like, who gives a shit? Like, people see weird shit all the time. That's basically the perspective that I have on it. Is that the military and the government in general is either incompetent or is just like, I have a role to play in providing security and providing stability to the local community, and I just have to just go with the answer that's going to continue the promotion of stability and security within a community. I have to make people feel okay. I have a duty to the civilian population in that regard, and I have a duty to the military itself to try not to do shit that's going to add controversy to things. It's not some there's not some evil overarching plan to try to deny that shit's happening. It's just that the military plays a role in the communities that they exist in, which is to try to promote peace and stability in the local community. There isn't some evil like government cover up of this shit. And obviously, as we're seeing now with all these reports coming out of the Pentagon releasing reports on UAP phenomenon and other things like that, the government's just simply saying, we don't know. We don't know what this stuff is. We don't have an opinion on it. We don't know. So, got to keep my throat clear. with some Coca-Cola. But this is one of those things that, like, I don't know. I don't think the government's really trying to go out of its way to try to suppress this sort of stuff. I think that people saying that the government's trying to go out of its way to suppress this sort of stuff are really more schizophrenically oriented people that, like, they have a tendency to fall onto the schizoid spectrum rather than the autism spectrum, to be completely honest. And they fall into those spectrums where they believe that there's an overarching, like, greater conspiracy of things to try to make things worse for the average person. And really, the government, if anything, is simply incompetent. They aren't evil, they're just simply incompetent. They aren't trying to push some sort of evil agenda on the populace. They just don't know, and they have a job to do, and they're going to do the job. That's all it is. And that might be me just saying that, because for a long time in my life, I wanted to. When I originally graduated high school, I was going to get an information systems degree, and I wanted to work for the NSA. When the university didn't work out, I went into the Army, and I was a 35 series, and I was going to be in military intelligence, and that didn't end up working out. But my goal was to try to parlay working in the Army to eventually working on a degree while I was in the Army, and then getting out and working at either the Central Intelligence Agency or the NSA. And neither of that worked out. I am now an insurance salesman because I'm very good at talking with people, and I'm very good at having conversations with people about learning about their life and also identifying needs for insurance products that people might have. And so, I don't know. There's the Gulf Breeze UFO incident kind of became this thing where it became this local phenomenon where people were, like, very interested in following what was going on with this guy reporting these UFOs and taking photographs of what he was saying were these UFOs. But it turned into this thing where, like, the Mutual UFO Network eventually, while believing it was just one crackpot taking fake photographs, eventually other people came forward and started saying that they were reporting things in the Gulf Breeze area. Now, Gulf Breeze, Florida is, like, if I remember correctly, it's a barrier island off the coast of the panhandle of Florida, and it's near Pensacola, which has a naval air station nearby. Pensacola is a very popular community for military retirees. And honestly, if I ever moved to Florida, it would probably be to Pensacola, because it just has a lot of characteristics that I think are good for being a retirement community. It's got a good climate. It's near the beach. It's not subject to the crazy fluctuations in property values that every other community in Florida is exposed to. And you also get the benefit of the lack of state income tax that Florida offers. But it's definitely more culturally Southern. It's not like South Florida culture or anything. And I think that it's something that's familiar that a lot of people choose to be like, well, if I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna go ahead and retire in Pensacola. It's kind of the value option for retiring in Florida. But I don't know where I was going with that. But this turned into this local thing that people were kind of freaking out about, and there was a variety of reports that came out of Gulf Breeze at the same time that Walters was reporting his photographs. But the problem is that Ed Walters, the original guy taking the photographs, eventually moved from Gulf Breeze. He moved out of his house, and the next owner found a model of a UFO inside of the attic of the house that looked almost exactly like the photographs that he was taking. It was basically, the model was produced from basically four plastic foam plates and some drafting paper. And Walters refused to take a polygraph test, but signed a sworn statement denying any knowledge of the model UFO. The homeowner that found the model also signed a sworn statement saying that he did not know who made it. And basically, the News Journal for Pensacola experimented with the model and were able to nearly duplicate some of the photos of the UFOs that Walters took. So this is one of those situations that the initial reports lead to other people coming out of the woodwork and saying, well, I saw something that I can't explain. And it eventually turned into this thing where it's like, okay, well, we have multiple reports of people saying that something happened, but they probably wouldn't have existed if there wasn't the initial kind of media outcry and media reaction and media response that happened from one guy coming out with very, very obvious proof of something happening. So, Gulf Breeze, I think, is entirely fake. I think that it was entirely something that was made up, basically. And I don't know. That's just my opinions on that. I'm just trying to make a vlog today. I'm just talking about something that I was thinking about. But there's a variety of other cases of UFO reports that I think happen to have been fake. Now, there's plenty of stuff that seems to be real enough that there doesn't seem to be any explanation for. That leads me to conclude that maybe there should be more research done in this, but I don't prioritize research inside of this field of in this field of study. I don't really necessarily. I think that the Mutual UFO Network and I think CUFOs as organizations apply enough skepticism to their approach to the subject of UFOs that I think that they are engaging in some sort of valid kind of scientific inquiry into the phenomenon. I think that they get enough reports that they're able to turn around and say that maybe it's fake, maybe it's fake, or maybe there's no logical explanation for what people might be seeing. I think that they apply enough of a degree of skepticism that they still think that it's a valid phenomenon, but they're able to separate the coal from the diamonds, basically. So there's enough diamonds in there that make it worth it to continue to pursue studying these sort of phenomenons, but there's a shit ton of coal that kind of makes it difficult. And I don't know if you hear it, but the tornado sirens are going off because I live in Oklahoma City. Tornado sirens get tested every day at Saturday at 12 noon. So, anyway, I hope y'all have a good day. Goodbye.